Dante Fields was no pushover. Before prison, he was an amateur boxer, 6'3", 220 pounds, locked up for assaulting a cop. But that night in Blackridge's infirmary, they found him curled up in a corner, stark, naked handcuffs, undone a female guard's jacket draped over a table like a forgotten trophy. No alarm was raised. No one checked in before the shift change. They dragged Dante back to his cell. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just kept a hand on his throat like someone had gripped it too long. 2 days later, he scrawled a letter to his mom. They'd laugh if I said I was forced. I'd hate myself if I said I liked it. No one said a word. No blood was spilled. No one died. The guard who let him out, a woman, grinned as she walked away. 3 weeks later, another inmate, Luis Ortez, got pulled out of solitary. He'd been a mess, battling heavy depression, but after being summoned to the records room for paperwork, he started dressing sharper, his name now spoken with a strange, syrupy tone. When his cellmate teased, "What boss sneaking you extra chow?" Luis just smirked. "I am the chow." No one got the joke until an internal roster leaked. Luis's name was under liaison reassignment, a term for inmates getting private off-hours access to a Level C supervisor. No one was punished. No one was called out. Some guys just got summoned more often than made sense, and the system ran smooth, no force needed. Obedience was built and greased by vague promises, "Play nice and I can make things easier." Blackridge Correctional Facility isn't your typical Virginia prison. No gun towers, no razor wire. Instead, they run a smart system that's pure dread cameras, sharp as hawk eyes, AI tracking every breath, and female guards with smiles sweet but cutting like a blade. The staff here are all women 25 to 40, fit, trained, and polite to a chilling degree. They don't yell. They don't drag inmates like dogs. A flick of the hand, a soft call of your name, and the terrifying part, whoever's called, stands up, follows like their soul's been snatched, no resistance. In Blackridge, rules are for the nobodies. If your name hits the special training list, you enter a twisted game where small privileges come with prices no one dares name. You get private meals, hot steak, not the watery slop from the common pot. You slip into the library after lights out. Real toothpaste, not cheap gel. Soap smelling of lavender, not lye that burns your skin. But the cost, dark hallways with no name on the map rooms that don't exist, and exchanges that never make the logbooks. At Blackridge, coercion isn't a word. They call it voluntary enhanced cooperation. No rape in the reports, just a cold line intimate behavior occurred outside standard context. Inmates are encouraged to meet emotional requests for reduced time, early parole, or reintegration. On paper, it's all optional. In reality, don't cooperate and you're erased from the yard list. New soap. Forget it. Family letters, no delivery. Your bunkmate might switch to someone meaner, and it's no accident. The system doesn't need whips. They've built a culture where being chosen is a sick privilege. Inmates give each other nicknames whispered by the guards themselves. Boy Blue, the guy summoned to the supervisor's room, eyes glued to the floor, shoulders trembling. Sugarline, the one who visits the warden's office 3 times a week, returning with a dead stare. Happy Meal, the guy who comes back with leftover food bags after unscheduled transfers, smiling but fists clenched. No one spills what happens in those exchanges, but everyone sees it the way they freeze like statues at a knock on the door, the shudder when an old perfume lingers, the way they clutch their stomach when their name's called, like hiding an invisible scar, a secret never spoken. At Blackridge, no one screams. Screams aren't recognized. Scream and the cell's mic breaks mysteriously. No one beats you. They just erase you from every list that matters, turning you into a shadow, a ghost, with nothing left to trade. And in Blackridge's darkness, that shadow fades like you never existed. Day 176 of the summer lockdown. Blackridge hit 44 degrees, the air thick with sweat and metal. The AC in B3 was dead, forcing guards to open cell doors early, letting inmates spill into the hallway, where pale fluorescent lights flickered like a dying pulse. That's when a forbidden melody crept out D'Angelo's Untitled, its sultry R&B notes, seeping from the records room like a venomous whisper. The song wasn't on the approved list. Its volume was low, not enough to trip alarms, but enough to make Kyle Manning freeze mid-step, head-tilted eyes narrowing. He grinned a jagged, knowing grin like he'd just torn through a lie. Kyle, a former firefighter, was quiet, never fought, never snitched. But that day he slipped back to his cell, grabbed a blunt pencil, and carved under his bunk with trembling scratches. Music isn't for seduction. They use it to break me before they touch me. No one saw the words until Rita Bell, a new guard, 27, blonde hair pulled, tight eyes, sharp as knives, bent down during a bunk check. She froze fingers, gripping her phone until her knuckles whitened, as if wrestling a dangerous secret. She snapped a photo of the carving. 30 seconds later, the hallway camera blinked out for 23 seconds. No glitch was logged. The system stayed silent like it swallowed a sin. 3 days later, Kyle vanished from Blackridge. No notice. No trace. Just an empty bunk and a scrap of paper tucked deep in the pillow left for the next man. If that song plays, don't let it move you. It's how they make you think you're loved. That note sparked the first ember. Deshaun King, Kyle's new cellmate, found it. That night, when a female guard called his name, her voice honey-sweet, but cold as steel, he stopped, locked eyes with her, and asked, "If I say no, will you stop smiling?" Her smile shattered her eyes, flashing panic as if the system had just been stabbed. That question, a small, sharp blade, wasn't in Blackridge's script. It was logged as emotional deviance. The next day, Deshaun lost yard privileges, got slapped with a psych monitoring code, a new band clamped on his wrist. But from then on, no R&B played during break hours. And for the first time in Blackridge, a few names hesitated when called. Not out of rebellion, but because a small cutting question began to spread. Am I human, or just a shift trade prize? In Blackridge's cold corridors, the click of the guards' heels faltered, as if the system had heard the first crack splintering in the dark. Thursday night shift, and Officer Serena Maddox, 34, supervisor of C2, didn't return to the control room at 2:00 a.m. as usual. Hallway cameras caught nothing, but the fingerprint scanner logged an entry. The auxiliary infirmary door opened at 1:46 a.m. in air thick with antiseptic fumes. By morning, a pair of standard-issue women's underwear was found tangled in the medical wipe bin. No one claimed it. No one asked. The head supervisor's log dismissed it, stray item, insignificant, no impact on operations. In cell 16 C2 block, Evan Ross woke, fingers trembling over faint bruises on his neck. Beside his pillow, a uniform button glinted under dim light, a handwritten M scratched inside like a whispered sin. Evan didn't report it. He just requested a cell change, voice low but firm. I'm not sure I want to be chosen anymore. Serena Maddox was granted 7 days leave, reason nervous strain from night shifts. But the internal cover-up hid a truth. The IT team found 4 short videos on her personal phone, filmed in the shadowy corner of a cell. No clear faces, just a voice quivering yet sharp. No, I didn't resist. But you need to know this isn't just work anymore. That line pierced Blackridge's ironclad protocol. Leave no trace. Feel no emotion. Never believe it's a real choice. A female guard unraveling, A male inmate rejecting the privilege of service. A button with a handwritten M, a crack in the system's perfect wall. And a system once untouchable now feeling eyes staring back from the dark. In C2's cold corridors, the low-ranking female guards began to whisper. If they start saying no. Who are we? The whispers melted into the night unanswered. In C2, a cell door creaked faintly, as if the system had heard the first splinter of a fracture. Serena Maddox didn't return after her 7-day leave. No resignation letter. No transfer notice. She vanished just like inmates before her. Her name replaced by a cold line in the record's female staff, no longer on roster. But what rattled the wardens wasn't her absence. It was the 3 inmates she'd chosen now refusing to comply. They offered no reasons, no defiance, just silence when their names were called, as if the summons had become a curse. In cell 16 C2 block, Evan Ross sat facing the wall during checks, hands clutching his shirt over his head, shielding himself from light or prying eyes. Each time the cell door clanked, his breath hitched, as if dreading an old voice rising from the dark. In the mess hall, the fracture showed. The chosen inmates once cloaked in quiet pride were now shunned. No one spoke their shame aloud, but chairs beside them stayed empty. Trays were placed a beat farther away, and the eyes around them asked wordless, "Did you really choose this?" Kayla Brent, a rookie guard not yet a year in, started sleeping in the locker room after night shifts. She whispered to a colleague, voice trembling, "As long as I'm not alone with them, I can still hold on to myself." Them wasn't the inmates, nor the brass. It was the part of her, a former human rights student, screaming, "Am I working or enabling a crime?" Blackridge's system didn't collapse. It still ran. But its sound had changed. No more bold name calls, no more scripted smiles. Just a stifling silence, and somewhere in the observation room, a stifled sob, as if the system itself were choking back tears. Night shift, 213. Kayla Brent, drained after 9 hours patrolling, dragged herself into the level 3 storage room to find last week's duty roster. Once Serena Maddox's domain, the room was sealed but not locked. No cameras, no eyes watching. Kayla flicked on the desk lamp, its sickly yellow glow spilling over tattered files and torn notepads. Then she saw it, an old USB drive taped under the desk with faded adhesive, a secret begging to be touched. She hesitated, breath-catching. She pulled it free, plugged it in. The screen lit up with a single folder, COM Realignment P3 Live Dex LS. She clicked. A list unfurled, 412 inmate names from C2 to solitary, each paired with chilling statuses, exchange completed. Emotional compliance met. Non-resistant, maintain. Next to each the guard's name, some marked direct reward with dates. The final column held internal notes sharp as blades, emotional lapse, transfer to psych treatment. Refusal to comply, reassigned to high-pressure block. And there, her name, Kayla Brent, noted emotional potential. Under observation, a red star burned beside it like dried blood. Kayla didn't shut it down, didn't delete it, didn't report it. Instead, she yanked the USB, hands trembling. During shift change, she slid it through the slot of cell 16, where Evan Ross sat back to the wall shadow, pooling under dim light. No words passed, no promises made. But by morning, a message scarred the mess hall wall, scrawled in blood mixed with soap, jagged but clear, "They're selling us." Within an hour, scans from the USB spread through the yard. The mess, the laundry pages passed hand to hand, tucked in sleeves, slipped under trays. No one knew who started it. For the first time in Blackridge's history, a level 4 alarm screamed without command. Red lights pulsed like a panicked heartbeat. Speakers blared lockdown orders. Cell doors slammed metal, screeching in the dark. Guards were summoned to central control faces pale under harsh fluorescence. The internal server logged the file's access opened 7 times. Device 7 unknown. Copied. Unerasable. Kayla returned to her quarters, lips sealed. She said nothing, only scratched a single line on her wrist with a ballpoint pen, ink trembling. I didn't choose to know. But now I can't unknow. At 0803 on day 219, Lena Monroe stepped into Blackridge. Black hair, neatly tied, white medical blouse, crisp, her name tag freshly printed, Monroe Lena, Health and Trauma Unit. But to readers of the Dispatcher, her name echoed a bold headline. The prison system isn't underground. It's buried in HR files. Lena, 38, investigative journalist, had exposed a medical fund laundering money through inmate fees. Banned from New York's prisons for 3 years, she vanished. Now she was back armed with a forged assignment from an undisclosed source, a silent blade slicing through the dark. She didn't first notice the guards or cameras, but the eyes of the cooperative inmates. Not fearful, just hollow. Not hateful, just resigned, as if their bodies were mere currency in a transaction. Kayla Brent was Lena's first target. During a routine blood pressure check, Lena saw Kayla's hand grip her radio knuckles, white though the hallway was still. She didn't probe, just slipped a note under a bandage in the medical kit. I'm not here to film. I'm here to reclaim the truth they taught you to forget. Evan Ross came next, flagged for prolonged insomnia. As Lena checked his pulse, she whispered, barely audible, I know about the USB. Evan didn't speak, his gaze fixed on the floor. But as she turned to leave, he pressed a button into her palm, etched with an M wrapped in a scrap of cloth, reeking of sweat and cheap soap. Scrawled in faint red ink, go deep enough, and you'll find someone here still holds their memory. That night, Lena forgot her laptop in the infirmary. Instead of returning to her dorm, she slipped into the level 3 storage room, Serena Maddox's old domain. Under the 3rd drawer, buried among emotional reintegration files, she found a small, unmarked recorder. She pressed play. Serena's voice, weary but unbroken, filled the silence I thought they only broke inmates. But after 5 years here, I see, they sell us too. For what, a paycheck to survive. Lena pocketed the device, heart pounding. She opened the door to leave. But the doorway wasn't empty. A tall man in civilian clothes stood there, no badge, no weapon. His eyes locked on hers, voice flat as an internal command. You don't belong here, Monroe. Who let you in? Lena lowered her mask, meeting his stare. How many in the exchange list haven't vanished yet? His lips twitched, unblinking. Wrong question. Try this. Are you ready to vanish, to keep them hidden? Below is the English translation of the revised, polished version of your text, written in a natural and internationally accessible style. The tone and atmosphere are preserved with clear, concise language suitable for a global audience. Under the dim, flickering lights of the prison, Marcus Hale, a longtime member of the chosen group, stepped out of the coordination room, clutching a box of grilled chicken sandwiches. While others were stuck with cold oatmeal, he had traded loyalty for privilege. But that morning, it wasn't loyalty that drove him to Director Vaughn's office. It was fear of returning to solitary confinement, where names were never spoken for 30 days. Standing before Vaughn, a man known for never taking notes, Marcus spoke, his voice trembling. Monroe has a recorder. Brent slipped a USB to Ross. I just want my name off the special treatment list. Vaughn didn't reply, his cold eyes fixed on Marcus, and 3 fingers tapped lightly on the desk. 3 sharp taps. The entire facility shifted to level 2 security lockdown. At the same time, in the eastern corridor, Lena sensed trouble when a camera locked onto her face 3 times in a hallway with only one entrance. A red light blinked erratically out of rhythm. An internal nurse passed by, no smile, no greeting, just a hand resting on her radio as she walked on, eyes averted. Lena didn't run. She turned and hurried toward the old medical storage room, abandoned since the 2021 upgrades. In a dusty drawer, she found an old radio, its side etched with silver ink dispatcher, CH4BK. The signal light still flickered faintly. She switched it on and whispered, "Dispatcher. This is Blackridge. Hear me?" No response came, only the faint hum of static pulsing weakly. In the interrogation room, Kayla Brent sat across from Vaughn, her hands cuffed behind her back, lips pressed tight, eyes avoiding his gaze. Vaughn didn't threaten. He simply read from the recovered data on the USB she had slipped through a door slot to Ross Brent. Geo4 unauthorized data transfer. Information contains internal encryption. Behavior emotionally non-compliant. Kayla said nothing. Her eyes dropped to her left wrist, where an inked phrase had blurred with sweat, "I can't not know." Meanwhile, in Block C2, Evan Ross began tapping on his cell wall. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, 3 taps. An old Morse code signal once used by firefighters. From Block D3, the one they called Quiet Man tapped back 1, 2, 3. Then, like a chain reaction, other cells joined in the steady rhythm, spreading like the heartbeat of a giant, waking from a deep, controlled sleep. The guards were baffled. No one shouted, no one broke the rules, but they couldn't stop a sound not listed in their protocol manuals. In the medical storage room, Lena crouched low, frantically transcribing Serena's recording onto a scrap of paper, every word, every breath. Outside footsteps approached, slow and deliberate, as if they knew exactly where she was, but weren't ready to act. Just then, the radio clicked softly. A frail, elderly male voice crackled through Blackridge. "We've got a faint signal. If you're alive, send the first segment of the internal code. We're reopening File 032. Lena let out a faint smile, the first since the day she arrived. Clutching the paper, her hand trembled with hope. At 3:12 a.m., the central monitoring room detected an anomaly. The night footage from day 217 began replaying on its own, unprompted. The unfiltered images flickered across the screen. Serena Maddox perched on prisoner Evan Ross, her uniform discarded their glances furtive. Kayla Brent, sliding a USB drive through the slot of cell 16, her movements swift as a shadow. Lena Monroe, peeling off a medical mask, pulling a small recorder from her blouse, her face taut under the dim glow. No one in the room spoke. Only the sharp exhale of a technician broke the silence, his hand letting the computer mouse slip to the desk. The screen wouldn't shut off. The file couldn't be locked. The delete key was disabled. Vaughn stood behind them, his eyes unblinking, his shadow looming across the floor. After a minute of silence, he issued a command, his voice cold as steel. "Move Brent to the psychological evaluation room. Place Monroe on the special handling list." Kayla was escorted from her cell in silence. No torture, no threats. Just a stark white room, its lights dim, with a plain wooden table at its center. On the table sat a stun gun and a printed photo of Lena Monroe, her faint smile caught in the grainy light of a night vision camera. Vaughn sat across from her, his demeanor calm. He didn't raise his voice, only spoke in an even tone. "We don't need your loyalty. We need you to prove you're no longer a traitor. Do this and you return to your role. Refuse and you become the next Serena." Kayla didn't cry. Her gaze fell to her left wrist where the inked words had blurred, completely erased by sweat. Nothing remained but the memory of the one person who believed she was still human. In Block C2, Evan Ross stood during the rest period. With his finger, he scratched into the brick wall, each stroke trembling but resolute. "If they want us to kill each other, we must do the opposite." Then, gripping his metal bowl, he began striking the wall, not in the old Morse code, but in a pulsing rhythm like his own heartbeat, growing faster, more urgent. The sound spread, igniting the entire facility. Prisoners in every block joined in pounding spoons, aluminum lids, and fists against their cell walls, merging into a single relentless rhythm like war drums resonating from the prison's core. The guards panicked. The coordinators scrambled, unable to silence a sound not listed in their protocols. The monitoring systems screeched with overload warnings. In the white room, Kayla rose to her feet. She didn't touch the stun gun. She didn't turn away. For the first time, she met Vaughn's gaze, her eyes free of the compliance they'd tried to instill. "If you think I could kill someone like Lena," she said, her voice slow but sharp, "you're wrong about the very thing that's kept this system alive. We may be obedient, but that doesn't mean we'll stay silent forever." She tossed the stun gun onto the table, the metal clattering against wood. Then she walked out, not waiting for permission. Vaughn didn't stop her. He only watched as her figure faded into the corridor, realizing that what he'd lost control of wasn't Kayla, but the spark she'd ignited spreading through the silence. At 2:41 a.m., Blackridge's internal server received an alien command. No human operator, no authentication code. Only a single chilling line: initiate containment, erase, lock, reset. Immediately, internal files began erasing themselves, as if driven by an invisible will. Prisoner records, hallway camera logs, staff entry-exit journals, coordination reports for Block C2, all dissolving in reverse order of their creation, like a book torn backward from its final page. In the coordination room, Vaughn jolted as the secondary monitor flickered, displaying his own name, management code 0039, blinking red, before vanishing from the navigation bar. He slammed the desk. His voice, sharp as steel, stopped the process. "Who entered this command?" The technician, pale-faced and stammering, replied, "No one, sir." The command appeared on its own. No trace of input. It's as if something inside the system wants to erase everything, including itself. At the same moment, in the auxiliary technical ward, where Marcus Hale was held in isolation pending transfer, a foul metallic stench filled the air. Guards broke down the door, only to find Marcus dead, kneeling, his throat slashed clean across the vocal cords. His right hand clutched a plastic dining knife, its handle sharpened to a deadly point. On the wall behind him, scrawled in his own blood, were the words, "Crimson and trembling. Next is the one who listens." No camera captured the scene. No staff were assigned to that ward that night. And in the data vault, Marcus's tracking file had been wiped clean 15 minutes before his death. Lena Monroe received a message from an internal nurse, a small rolled-up scrap of paper slipped inside her glove. The trembling handwriting read, "Don't trust any data that remains. The system no longer controls itself. It's erasing all memory." Lena gripped the note tightly, her eyes scanning the dim hallway where the red camera lights still blinked erratically. From an upper level, Kayla stared at a surveillance monitor, watching the system's activity map pulse red like the veins of a convulsing body. She whispered, her voice barely audible, "It's no longer just a place. It's a creature devouring its own flesh." In Block C2, Evan Ross stood during the rest period. Silent, he scratched words onto his wrist with his fingernail, each stroke trembling but resolute. "If I vanish, it means it's the turn of the one who still remembers." Blackridge no longer needed traitors. It only needed those with no trace left to track. And that was the final warning, not broadcast through speakers, not spoken by any voice, but arriving like a chill slithering down your spine when you delete a recording. Only to hear it play back, though no signal remains. It began not with words, but with a symbol, a backward E slashed through a circle scratched crudely onto the wall of Block C2. The guards dismissed it as mere vandalism. But 3 hours later, the same symbol appeared in Block D smeared in toothpaste. In Block B, it was traced in instant coffee. In Block F, it was scrawled in dried blood on a handkerchief. Within a single day, the backward E spread across Blackridge as if someone or something was rewriting the prison's map in a language the system's scanners couldn't decipher. Evan Ross, the first to carve the symbol, wasn't summoned to disciplinary. Every cell block bore the same mark etched in unison with no trace of who started it. And that was what sent the system into a silent panic, its inability to pinpoint the source. Meanwhile, at 2 a.m. during a quiet shift change, Kayla Brent slipped into the internal audio server room. With deft precision, she replaced the facility's background music file, Concerto C minor 421, with a recording of Serena and Lena's voices. They say memory is secondary, but if you still remember, they haven't uprooted you. If I can still hear my own voice, they haven't programmed me to be silent like software. She tagged the file Emergency Evacuation Drill, Audio Sample V2. No one checked it. The next morning, as prisoners gathered for breakfast, the facility's speakers hummed to life. The opening notes were a familiar piano melody, but at 1:42, Lena's voice emerged soft as a whisper through steel pipes. If I vanish, don't look for me. Look in the mirror and ask, do I still have something left to hold on to? No one shouted. No one stood. But over 40 prisoners bowed their heads at their tables, their left hands pressed to their chests, thumbs digging into their sternums where their hearts once beat before the system tried to reprogram them. The gesture wasn't trained. It wasn't rebellion. It was simply remembering what it meant to be human. In the coordination room, Vaughn stared at the audio error report flickering on the screen. Audio file unformatted. Cannot be deleted. System detection file contains biological emotion. Status unavailable for editing. He exhaled heavily, leaning back in his chair. For the first time in his career as overseer, he switched off the microphone. No orders, no signal cuts. He just listened. Morning of day 224. The food sterilizer remained silent. The alarm bell didn't sound. Yet Block D3 was deathly quiet, for Cell 11 stood empty. No one had been escorted out. No name appeared on the transfer list. No camera recorded any movement. Only a message remained scrawled on the sink's edge in blood and sharpened metal from a dining spoon. Words unspoken will not be protected. Quiet man. The one who never spoke, who echoed Evan's signal, who first drew the backward E in condensed milk, was gone. No one uttered a word. No one dared say his name. But in the eyes of the remaining prisoners, a question flickered for the first time. The quieter we are, the easier we vanish. That evening, Lena slipped back into the abandoned medical bay to check the transmission device. What she found was impossible. The original recordings of Serena's voice had been relabeled. Gone were the tags Dispatch or Serena, Room 314. In their place, a single line in the system's internal font, I'm not watching from outside. I'm inside you. Lena yanked off her headset, but the sound lingered echoing in the room, not through the device, not from any speaker. A voice unmistakably Serena's, yet not her. You thought you could broadcast memories. Let me help. I'll back them up into every prisoner. Try finding the original now. That same night, Blackridge's cameras captured 23 prisoners bolting upright in their sleep eyes, wide lips mouthing in unison. I'm not watching from outside. I'm inside you. No explanation emerged. No signal was detected. No implants. No AI navigation. Only a single technical report reached Vaughn. Neural activity in the rebel group shows abnormal synchronization. As if Something is broadcasting into their subconscious memory. In her cell, Lena transcribed every fragment of the recorded code onto paper in thick ink, then burned it. She wrote it again. If she died, the last thing she'd leave behind wouldn't be evidence, it would be the feeling of having dared to name what no one else would. Day 225. A strange device was found behind a false wall in the technical ward, once Serena Maddox's monitoring room. It wasn't on any inventory list. It bore no manufacturer's mark. When activated by an internal signal, it emitted a low, unfamiliar voice, not Serena's. This isn't a prison for captives. It's a testing ground for the survival of memory. Lena sat before the screen, hands trembling. The next recording was her own voice, yet not from any tape she'd made. If I still remember how to resist, I might be part of a memory reactivation loop. Some rebellions aren't meant to break the system, they're meant to keep it from shutting down completely. Evan pored over the last scraps of code in the system, accessed with Quiet Man's help. Buried in an encrypted internal log named Serena Override LV4 was the original blueprint of the program-controlled rebellion phase memory cycles. Ethical destabilization to induce conditional compliance. Program Overseer Kayla Brent. Kayla, confined in an isolation cell, sat motionless. No cuffs, no guards. Just a yellow light casting shadows on her expressionless face. A system message flickered on the wall, visible only to her Brent LV1 resetter. Emotional activation cycle complete. Loop resets in 0300 minutes. She let out a quiet laugh, not loud, but the kind that comes from recognizing the thing you fled was something you wrote. To never fully escape. Vaughn stared at a monitor listing every guard in the exchange completed roster, their statuses marked vanished, non-responsive, mentally unstable. He knew the system was collapsing, not from an attack, but from spawning emotional variants it couldn't control. At the bottom, in red, a warning blinked. Alert: current rebel holds an override code. If not erased, the system will store their memory as the original. In the medical bay, Lena played Serena's final recording, the original "I thought I was saving someone from being looped." But if you're hearing this, you might be the one keeping the loop alive. No one knew anymore if they were victim or programmer. No one knew if they resisted to escape or to give the system a reason to persist. That was the truth beneath it all. Rebellion was necessary, but only enough to keep the prison from collapsing and to keep swapping the roles of captor and captive. At 6:10 a.m., Kayla Brent was escorted from solitary confinement. No handcuffs, no warnings, just a sealed federal envelope on the wooden table stamped with bold letters, "Subpoena, Federal District Court Case 498RX. Inside was a letter, "Ms. Kayla Brent. According to Blackridge system records, you are the sole holder of the internal verification code tied to the Rebellion Compliance Program. You have a choice: cooperate as a witness and your identity will be protected. Refuse and face prosecution as an accomplice to a system of oppression." Below, a handwritten note in blue ink, unsigned. "This time you can't stay neutral." Kayla sat in silence for a long moment. Then she opened the old recorder in her pocket, playing Serena's final words. "If you choose the wrong side, don't forget the first time you stayed silent was because you thought you didn't deserve to choose the right one." At the same time, the FBI issued an official press release: Operation Hollow Echo has been activated. All activities at Blackridge Detention Facility are suspended pending investigation. 3 senior administrators, including Director Vaughn, were detained for questioning on human rights violations. Vaughn was ordered to surrender all internal command logs from 2018 onward. The media was barred from entering the facility, but a leaked audio clip slipped past the gates. At 8:00 p.m., ProPublica published an exposé titled Implanted Memories: The Compliance Loop Inside an American Prison. It featured Serena's recording, "I don't want anyone to remember me. I just want them to remember someone was taught to forget themselves." The story exploded across Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube. The hashtag #BlackRidgeLoop trended globally within 2 hours. In the abandoned medical bay, Lena received an email from an anonymous address containing a single line: "Monroe. If you don't testify, this memory will never become history. It'll just be a whisper erased by the wind." Attached was a file, "Serena Final Cut, Wave an unreleased recording." It listed the names, times, and voices of all 24 female guards involved, their every word captured. Lena closed her eyes, her fingers trembling over the keyboard. Simultaneously, Kayla, Lena, and Evan received the same message: "You have 24 hours to choose a side." On day 231, the Eastern District Federal Court convened in Courtroom 4, its glass ceiling casting cold light across the room. Reporters sat in silence, cameras stilled as the testimony began. Lena Monroe stepped to the witness stand, not in a standard witness uniform, but in her old medical blouse, its cuffs stained with blurred ink from an internal code. She didn't look at the judge or the defendants. Her gaze fixed on the screen in the center of the room, frozen on Serena Maddox's final image captured by an internal camera. Her voice was steady like a documentary narrator's slow cadence. "We're not here to win. We're not here for justice. We're here so that when someone names a prison, it's no longer seen as a place where people are corrected, but where memories were reprogrammed." She paused, then reached into her pocket, pulling out a small recorder and setting it on the stand. No one objected. She pressed play. Serena's voice filled the room, clear, weary, and so real it made someone in the gallery pull their hand from the wooden armrest. "If I'm guilty, it's because I couldn't stop my hands from teaching others how to endure. I thought silence was survival, but if someone remembers me, I beg them, don't let me be absolved by being forgotten." No one moved. No one stopped the device, though the recording ran past the 90-second limit. When the sound faded, the judge gave a slight nod, then delivered the verdict: "Defendant Rita Bell is found guilty of severe human rights violations, including abuse of authority to coerce prisoners, aiding in the erasure of personal records, and manipulating internal psychological protocols. She is sentenced to 22 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole." Defendants Lori Page, Amelia Knox, and secondary supervisors are permanently stripped of professional licenses and face civil liability under the Federal Personal Freedom Act. The court further orders the establishment of a special oversight commission for nationwide civilian reintegration systems. In the gallery, Evan sat quietly, offering no statement. His eyes lingered on his hand, where the backward E remained etched. Kayla was absent. She had declined her witness status and vanished the previous night. But in the press packet released after the trial, buried at the end of a PDF, was a line in an unfamiliar font. "If you're still reading, you still have a side to choose." The Blackridge files now sit in a classified vault at the Department of Justice, marked "Do Not Destroy Before 2090." The original recorder of Serena's voice, its whereabouts unknown. Yet in another correctional facility in a different state every Tuesday morning at exactly 7:07 a.m. An old melody plays in the dining hall, a halting piano followed by a woman's whisper. "If I still remember, it means I haven't been fully programmed." Memories don't need to be true. They just need to avoid being buried. If you're hearing this and you know someone who survived in silence, don't ask why they didn't speak sooner. Ask yourself, are you quiet enough to listen when their words no longer have form? For those who were part of the system and seek redemption, start by not denying what happened. Sometimes choosing a side isn't about standing with someone. It's about stopping before you become the person you once feared most. She didn't die, but her memory now lives in those whose names are no longer spoken. Thank you for watching this video and joining us on this gripping journey through the Blackridge story. Stay tuned for the next video where we'll dive deeper into the mysteries and revelations that await. See you there.